you know, no casting of aspersions. It's you know, things that are
Someone.
children will no longer be, but you know, but
And
it's
will
also
be
part
primarily. So they will do.
I didn't see it.
you know, and I
Not. Those kids would have.
We're good to go.
That way. Having training on the new voting equipment. Putting up simultaneous for everybody, for all the. I do need.
I'm just making sure that I wasn't printed because.
Fairness? No, there are.
Numbers engineer kind of guys or something, and I also need.
Right, let me call to order the
I don't know if you're.
Town of Hanover Selectboard meeting for Monday, April 14th. Tonight is a continuation of the public hearing that was begun last week. Prior to reconvening, are there any agenda review items from select board members? Seeing none, let's move on to public comment. This is the period of the agenda when the public is welcome to address the select board. We ask that one addresses issues that are already scheduled on the agenda. We ask that individuals restrict their comments to 5 minutes. Questions will be directed to the chair. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak this evening? David, if you could please come forward.
My name's David Vincelet. I live at 93 Lebanon Street. We live along the brook there. I've lived there 41 years, and April 1st, we celebrated our 41st anniversary jump into the brook. Fools for Christ, modeled on Samson Occam's expression. We've had quite a time, pretty amazingly cold, but we've survived it. I'm wondering if these new screens here are available to the public to show pictures or videos as part of a public access.
So, yeah, problem. Are these screenings in any way available for public access? Maybe walk us through that.
So if the board allows for the use of these for display, it would either provide me with the information or join by Zoom. I'm assuming that the board may want to make sure the information is publicly appropriate, so that it's reviewed in advance.
So well, there you go. Okay, that's one way of sharing. Thank you. Yeah, so the idea is to eventually migrate to a bit of a different tech form, something that used to be called More Docs or something similar, which would enable people to follow along at home on the materials, and the materials can be posted in a better way that's more transparent for everybody.
Right. I was actually talking about, like, I have some video, digital video, Mr. Houseman, both coming down to see us when we were imprisoned in a false prison by him. And also when he opened my fence up after 2.5 or 25.5 months, videotape of him. I think it's a lot more helpful to see. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And these are thousands of photos, so it seems like it would be helpful to the board since you all don't seem to have been coming here for 8 years. I have a duty to defend the Constitution due to my oath of office sworn to God. I'm a 25-year veteran of the United States Army. Shouldn't have to beg to be able to come and go from my home. I come here tonight to try to get my local government officials to bring some liberty and justice to Hanover and Dartmouth. My detailed explanation of state and federal crimes committed by Hanover officials and workers was ignored when the select board chose to promote Robert Houseman, town manager. He is the man responsible for illegally restraining us at my property for 5.5 months with a fence across our driveway and fire lane. The fire department never came to inspect our blockaded and fenced emergency access during the entire time we were restrained there. It took 5 months for Hanover Police Department and Mr. Houseman to come visit my house after dozens of calls for help. The police chief, Charlie Dennis, took a photo. Then they both abandoned us for the next 20.5 months. Despite a number of statutory violations, no one has been charged for our restraint of freedom, which is a crime under New Hampshire's revised statutes, 633:2. It's criminal restraint. When you're held in danger, as we were with no driveway and fire lane, I'm a disabled veteran, and I should not have to fight Hanover for my liberty or my family's. Federal legislation, 18 U.S.C. 242, stops the violation of constitutional rights. It was written to protect the slaves who had been freed but were being abused by small town sheriffs. Since the time I started to tell my story and try to get somebody to do something, I've been canceled most of the places in town. The Daily Dartmouth refuses to ever put anything on my copies of stuff I send them. Valley News, the last thing they published was a picture of us fenced into the property, and then they abandoned us. The vibe.
Other public comment? Thank you. All right, we will move now to the reconvene the public hearing, which was suspended 1 week ago, and pursue our discussion of the town warrant. The intervening week, Rob, you sent some materials around. Perhaps we want to start with warrant article number 10.
Love to.
I'm gonna use myself
For this
for
warrant
this
article.
one article,
Yep.
and I'll come back.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Staff is recommending that the warrant article be withdrawn from the ballot, or the warrant. And the rationales in my memo. I will say that I had the opportunity to present to the Hanover School Board and received feedback there. We received feedback from the Finance Committee, the CIPC, and the public input that we received at the last select board meeting. And based on that feedback, I'm making a recommendation that we shift our approach, appropriate $150,000 to hire a consultant or consultants that can do some additional design work and some finance analysis for us, to include but not limited to a TIF. And if approved, we would push hard to get that launched on July 1, issue an RFQ before July 1 with the award scheduled for July 1, with the expectation that we could have something to the CIPC committee before their deadline, and to the select board, and then ultimately the town meeting warrant if we have 2026 vote. That's my recommendation.
So, and just as a reminder, and presumably this will be part of the study within the context of a TIF revenue sharing, if you want to call it that, such that the schools could be made, up to wholly made whole.
Yes.
Is an option.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. We'll do some analysis on how much of the tax base is contained within the area of the TIF, what the projected build out cycle would look like, and how that impacts
the share to the school. Right now, it's about 5.4% of the total tax base. So when we start to look at those numbers, it might shed some light as to how we deal with that.
We will look at non-TIF, and I said this,
Yes.
we'll look at non-TIF options,
Yes.
which could include general obligation and grants
Grants, there are other options available. I just haven't had the opportunity to vet them.
So I know there are folks here who would like to speak to the select board, but first let me turn to the select board to see if they have any comments just at the outset. Not back, further discussion, of course, but.
Yeah.
Jen?
I mean, I think that, I read your memo and thank you for all of that, context. And for speaking to all these groups. But I think it's be a dereliction to kick these projects down the road. I think it's imperative that we make progress on these projects. And that, we can talk about the TIF, but next year, but the funding mechanism is not the only thing at stake here. And I think it's important that we move forward. We already talked, previously about the infrastructure that's in need of repair. And we already know that the money we spend making these repairs is basically just throwing it down a hole. They don't even last the winter. So I just think it's important if we are not advancing the TIF, that we make sure we put money aside, not just to do outreach and to study the TIF, but that we put money aside as we would have if we had established a TIF, so that we can make preliminary designs and keep this moving forward.
So you're suggesting we should begin the design process coming year?
Yes. Which is what we would have, that had been the plan. So that we could then, that year would take the funding mechanism this year, is what we were talking about. And then take the designs that we worked on during that year, which if we don't fund that, will not be developed. And then take that next town meeting. I think it's imperative that we make progress. We've been talking about making these repairs that are needed for 5 years. And I don't think it's a sustainable choice to leave it for the future, basically kick it down the road.
That's my initial reaction. It's just that since we know there are multiple options to pursue in terms of the actual project, putting aside the financing vehicle, my concern might be that if we start doing design work, we haven't selected the final project and the financing, that we potentially spend money that could be lost. The design process would have, those funds could be effectively lost if we choose a different project. So I would take it in steps. First, let's figure out what the project is, how big it's going to be, and start the design process.
I think that is the design process. We have some conceptual designs, and the next stage would be to create preliminary designs. The TIF had a governance structure that another issue that we want to address. Like if we're not going with the TIF, how are we going to do this outreach? How are we going to involve people? And how are we going to have oversight? But the next step is preliminary designs. Like we're not wasting money designing. That's money that if we are going to advance these projects, we need to design them. I don't know how else to say that. We can't we're not going to move forward by not working on it. We need to make progress. So when we first came and Rob brought us his budget, this idea was we had this budget and we would have this TIF that would be saving money for these other projects. I think that's still very important, regardless of what the funding mechanism is, so that we can proceed as we had talked about with developing the next stage of design. That's not funding the whole project. That's funding the preliminary designs.
Yeah, so I totally support what Jenny is suggesting here. I think you know, I drove back into town last night and, you know, looked up as I came into the gateway of our town, which is West Wheelock Street, and started counting power lines, and I got to 80 when I was about 3/4 of the way up the street, and was reminded of the developing and third world countries that I've spent my first career working in, with you know, just wires going everywhere. You know, that should be the gateway to our town. It should be beautiful. It should be well designed, and it has been overlooked for a really long time. And Main Street, you know, our sidewalks are crumbling. There were holes so big in front of Lou's that you could fit your whole foot inside of the hole, and those were filled in with asphalt because you know, it was the cheapest and quickest way to fill in these holes that were a danger to pedestrians. You know, in terms of safety of our pedestrians, the people riding scooters, the people riding bikes, it's just not where it should be. And you know, the fact that we had 3 water main breaks within a couple days here, right here, 5. Okay, there you go. You know, we have 125-year-old pipes under the ground. We just we need to not stop making progress on this. We need to do better. And you know, I was a little disappointed in the last, or kind of leading up to this, that we focused on a couple of things, right? We focused on parallel parking, right? That is one design or one concept out of 3. And that is like step 9, and we are at step 1 right now of deciding whether we're going to go to parallel or angled parking. We focused on the minutia of how much of the TIF is going to get shared, and at this point, all we're doing is trying to draw the boundaries of a district, let alone get into the negotiations with the school board of how the incremental tax increase is going to be separated. And you know, I think I know for me, and I think I can speak for everyone else on the board, that we need to have those conversations, and we want to have those conversations, and we want to be collaborative in this. And I was pretty disappointed at how some of those comments were made. You know, comments like stealing from our kids. You know, I have 3 kids in the school system. I certainly don't have any intention of stealing from the school board. So I guess I support Jenny's comments here that we need to keep making progress on this. And you know, whenever there is something like this that we bring forward, something that there's progress, and you know, the loudest people in the room tend to be the people that that win the argument, and I just want to make sure that we're not going to be swayed by just the loudest people, and we have to because there's a lot of people that don't come to these meetings and have really strong feelings about our downtown and need our downtown to improve and get better, and I would like to see that continue to move.
What about me?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Oh, brother, I was coming to you.
No, you weren't.
I will.
I was going to make a comment, but let's hear from you first.
I only have one thing to say. Is that Jenny and Jared have been extremely eloquent, and I completely agree with everything they just said. If I speak, I'm sort of joking that I needed to speak because I really don't have anything to add with what they said. But I want to be recognized.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you. So I guess I want to be clear in what I think I'm hearing, because my understanding of, if the TIF were to go forward, my understanding is that the money would be collected but not spent. We're not authorizing spending, so it's just collecting money. Doesn't mean we'd be moving forward on design and we would be holding back, we would be accruing funds but not expending, right? I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Well, so I just don't want to kick this, as Jenny said, kick this down the road for a year and say, okay, we'll spend the next year and we won't do anything, but next year we'll continue to make progress.
So let's talk about what the expenditure of $150,000, presumably that buys us something. So wait, what does $150,000 buy us?
So,
It'll get us a more refined construction it'll give us the framework to do the public outreach. It'll give us the opportunity to refine options and ultimately select a design solution. I think that's the goal, to have one solution for downtown and one for West Wheelock, and to cost it out in a more detailed manner, and also to develop financing options for it.
So that seems like that is making progress and getting hopefully community buy-in and everybody on board. So.
Yeah, no, I absolutely support Rob's recommendation on Article 10. Okay, I just want to express my desire to keep making progress and just yes, I fully support this.
Let me now pull in board member process. Do you support Rob's recommendation with respect to Article 10 and the funding of $150,000 to make progress? You do? Okay. Right. Thank you.
it's Jenny's.
No, I support allocating, the $200,000 to $400,000 we need to develop preliminary designs in addition to whatever other outreach and research into TIF that the 150 is buying. I mean, we're just not moving forward.
Do we have, Rob, do we have a budget, or do we have any idea of a budget of what Jenny's proposing? It's a very logical question.
Yeah, so I think if we use the rule of thumb that full design and permitting of any project like this would be about 10% of the project's cost. So at 14 million a segment or 28 million total, 2.8 million is the total design and permitting side of it, roughly. You break that into conceptual design, preliminary design, final design. I think Jenny's going conceptual design to preliminary design and some deeper cost estimates. It's generally 10% of the project for the first tranche, 20 to 30% of the cost for the first and second tranche, and then 70% for the third tranche. So that's how I would break it out. But we're also hiring a consultant, not just on the design side, the engineering side of the house, but someone with expertise that can look at the finances. And that might be two separate consultants. I did reach out to Lebanon, and their fiscal analysis for their TIF is about 35.
Jenny, where would you recommend the money come from for the additional, did you say 200 to 400,000?
Well, I think we had a conversation here where we bought 600,000. We wouldn't be putting anything towards these projects. So I thought if we kind of meet that halfway, we could actually make progress on the designs.
So you would raise the tax rate for the differential. Is that right?
You would, or undesignate, as UDF.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when we talked about not doing the TIF, it was like, if we don't do the TIF, which we might do next year, because there's a whole, that 70% that of the 28 million, that's really the big part that we need to come up with a funding strategy for, right? But if we don't do the TIF, the idea was we should put it to the voters. And my concern, and I hope I'm being clear and consistent, is that I don't think this is a sustainable way to operate. I think we need to be thinking of this triple bottom line. And right now, that means investing in these streets that we know need repair, it's just like sucking up money anyway and not doing anybody any favors. And we should be making it sustainable for the future, and we should be making it more equitable in terms of who is being served by our town. So, yeah.
We actually crunched the numbers for, if we use the undesignated, but I shouldn't take credit for it, Ellen.
That's fine. It's good.
Ellen has a spreadsheet that she can pull the levers on to look at what each iteration would do to the undesignated fund balance. So 150,000 brings the undesignated fund balance below. So 14 point.
It's about 14.5%. So still within the 10 to 15% guidelines.
And what 200 would do what?
It brings it down to 14.3%. So.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when we talked about the budget, we were talking about having a TIF, so saving for the future, for repairs that we need to do, and this budget. If we don't have the TIF, the idea was the simple way to acknowledge that we're talking about this project is to put it in the budget and have the town vote on it through the general fund. Like, there's not like, if we don't save that money, we don't save that money. Like, I don't know how else to, there has to be another way if we want to do this project, and we still want to do this project the same as we did when we came into this budget process. It makes sense to me to think about allocating some of those funds.
And I guess from a town voting on it perspective, if we did a bond, so let's say either context.
Yeah, there's gonna be a big bond, right?
Well, so
To
that's
just do the project.
correct, and that's the town voting on the project. As opposed to,
But in order to vote on the project, you need to have the plans. This is like, I kind of feel like we're going in circles. We can't vote on the project without the concept. That doesn't happen. We don't conjure up a concept, or we can do that right now. We just vote on the concept plans that we have. But we already decided that that's not what we're gonna do. We're gonna do, engagement and outreach and go to the planning board, the CIPC and the school board and the Hanover Bike Walk, and we're gonna do this right? We're gonna reach out to people, we're gonna do this engagement process, we're gonna come up with a concept, and we're gonna make that a plan, and we're gonna present that, which I think makes a ton of sense, right? We still have to do that, and we were planning to do it, I thought this year, but I don't see any funds allocated to doing that.
I think it's 150,000.
Proposed.
Proposed 150,000.
No, I think Jenny's saying without the amendment that I'm proposing to the budget, that there wasn't a direct line item for the TIF plan.
You're proposing $150,000.
There was some consulting line item money that I was planning to use in the planning department, but it wouldn't, it's not this amount. It's like 50, I have assessed.
So there's some evolution of conceptual work, et cetera. It's just a question of perhaps degree. But
Well, let me be clear. The planning department's budget carries a $50,000 consulting line item for projects to support the planning board, the select board, the town manager, and I'm allocating.
So we have a total of 200,000.
No, my intent was not to add, by doing this, I'm no longer allocating it because it creates the flexibility we
I
need.
see. Okay, got it.
So
I mean, normally we have that because we need that.
Yeah.
Like, that's like part of our operating budget. And
So-
150, I mean, maybe, Rob, you can speak to the cost more, but I don't think that's getting us where we need to go based on the percentages that people typically spend to develop the preliminary designs.
I'm not sure I can elaborate any more detail at this point. The end result will be, well, I don't have, until I do an RFQ, get responses back, go through the process, I don't know what the number's gonna be. And I think, Jenny, you're trying to get us farther down the path than I was expecting with what I proposed. That's all. And 200,000 or 150, I think both will get us down the path further. Both will get us to some level of detail. The question is it enough for what you want as a select board or as an individual on the select board? I can't speak to that because I don't know until I get the responses.
So I recommend we split this into two discussions. One question is to TIF or to not to TIF. That's warrant article 10. I know a number of people are here to speak to that. I think there's a separate question about finalizing the budget. And do we go with Rob's suggestion of $150,000? We think about more. So maybe we can split and bring people in to talk about warrant article 10. Everyone amenable with that?
It's a public hearing. We took a lot of discussion last time, as Jared talked about. It's your call. I'm not sure of the usefulness of this.
Well, all right. So, folks are here to speak on this topic, so I'd like to respect their time. Please feel free to come forward. Deb, and if you could say your name, even though we know your name, but please, if you could say your name. Where you live.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Deb Nelson and I live in Hanover. And I am on the Hanover, the Dresden, and the SAU school boards. And I want to thank Rob for coming to our meeting this past week and sharing with us some details. I also want very much to say that the school board completely understands the condition of the roads, completely understands the desirability of hiding power lines, completely wants there not to be broken water mains on the street. We understand all of that. And we are a part of the same community and don't see ourselves at cross purposes with one another. It may also be helpful to the select board to know that we have roofs that need to be replaced. On the high school, we've been putting off things like solar power because of the roof situation. We've got issues at the Richmond School as well. So we've got costs. And I think one of the values of kind of following the rules is that you come to us and you hear our sentiment and we come to you and you hear ours and we work together. After Rob left, we did, it was sort of ugly, hammer out a motion to bring to you and we voted on it unanimously. So I am going to read it with your permission. Given the absence of data about the concrete impact to the tax rate, the lack of an end date, the lack of a currently proposed bond, the failure to meet the statutory requirements of RSA 162-K:9, and our concerns about the detrimental impact on school budgets, the Hanover School Board does not support the adoption of the proposed Main and West Wheelock TIF district referenced in Article 10. If a mechanism exists to make the school district whole or to carve us out from the TIF limitations with data to demonstrate that revenue sharing, we would take a neutral position on the TIF. And that's the end of our motion. So thank you very much. I doubt you have questions for me, but I'm not going very far.
Deb, I will say just before we go, one of the ambitions for the CIPC is to more closely coordinate with the school district, which is why there is a school board member on that committee. And at the end of the day, we all work for the same boss, which is the residents and
Absolutely.
taxpayers of Hanover. So, part of the idea of the CIPC is that we be thoughtful about capital commitments, bonds,
Correct.
all of that. So that's a little bit still an ambition. I think our work as a committee on the CIPC is evolving. We're getting better. We're getting, but that is definitely an ambition to really be thoughtful about long range financial planning, your roof, our roads. So
You got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Our roof, our roads.
Our roof. You're right.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Other members of the public, or attendees from various committees. Yes.
Doug Lance, I live on 179 Lime Road. I'm a taxpayer, live here in Hanover. I'm listening and I'm frustrated back there because you guys all know what I do. Most of you know what I do. I'm sort of retired, but I decided I'd find a job where I could walk a lot of miles every day. And I've been on the street now for 8 years. I'm in my 9th year. It gets trickier all the time. I listen to a lot of people. I listen to store owners, and I was a business owner myself in my first life. And I'm really frustrated because it's almost like the people I talk to, what do you mean they're going to take away parking? What are they doing to Main Street? Well, I go, what people want is the community to be more available. I hear people, and we hear it all the time, we're not coming back because there's no place to park. And I'm hearing, boy, we want to make the sidewalks really big. And I go, that'd be great. I know in my business, I go, hey, pass on the sidewalk. I'd like to have more parking in front of my store so I could have business. I had someone stop the other day that stopped me on the street and they want to know how that thing went. And I said, well, it went pretty well, I think. I think people are listening. She said, take this to the meeting. No cars, no business. I watched what happened on Allen Street last year. I felt bad for Jack Stenson. That kind of stuff would potentially, I mean, his numbers were way off. It was great for some, not so great for others.
Not to refute that, but we're not looking at conceptual choices here tonight. We're not looking at various parking configurations. The designs that were put forward last week with respect will be revisited and discussed at great length over the coming.
Oh, I was on the impression, listening to Jenny, that you guys are going to move ahead fast. And wait a minute. I think there's a lot of people that would like to see more parking, not less.
Doug, I'm totally with you. And I told you when I saw you on the street the other day, I am not sold on the concept that was presented. However, the vast majority of the funding that we are looking for goes to replacing water mains.
I'm really sorry. This is the wrong meeting.
No, it's
Kind of right, but
I'm glad that you're talking to all these people and bringing this stuff up, but that concept was just a concept.
Oh, I thought it was moving right along, and that's, I'm sorry.
That's, I don't know that we've done a good enough job of explaining that, because you're right. Last week, we heard a bunch of people come out and say, we don't want all this parking. And that is the wrong message for downtown business owners to be sending. Because the message that sends is, we don't want to do anything. We want to leave things exactly how it is. And that is really, really bad from my perspective as a business owner. The decision of whether we go to parallel parking, or angled parking, or we make all of downtown Main Street a big parking lot like West Leb is way down the road. And we are not at that point yet. And we are going to have a lot of public discussion to figure that out.
I'm sorry that I took up your time. I was under the impression that tonight was a continuation of what we talked about last.
This process has evolved over time. I think that was a 2020 design. It kind of dusted off as, hey, here's a thing we could do, but it's one of like 6 flavors.
Yeah. And so, Doug, I'm totally with you because I hear the same comments, right? I don't come to Lou's because I can't find a place to park. Or I would do takeout from Lou's, but I'm not gonna come to Hanover because I don't wanna get a parking ticket. Or every time I come to Hanover, I get a ticket.
I think they'd be happy to get a parking ticket if they could find a place to park. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And on that note, seriously, I'm sorry that I was under the impression that that was.
Good, I just want you to be, because Jared's right, we haven't, the way it's evolved as a discussion, it might look like, hey, that's what we're doing. That's kind of one possibility, and we're not committed to it, so, but.
The vast majority of the funding is gonna be under the ground.
I understand that. I'm really, you guys continue on. I was under the impression here we're talking
No,
about.
thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
It's not-
And by the way, if you don't know this, I'm passionate about this town. I love it.
You got that impression.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, other comments? Kari,
Yes, why not?
just tell us your name and where you live.
Yes, so my name is Kari Asmus. I live outside of Etna, and I'm just speaking as myself, although I hold some titles to different things. So I guess, first of all, I want to repeat what I said in the email that I will send to you, which is to thank Rob for his recommendation regarding Article 10. I really think that that is in the best interest of our town. I was really starting to see a pitting of the town against the schools, which is really unfortunate. The thing that I do want to say is that listening to the school board and knowing that those individuals will be the same individuals who are there next February, that I think a lot of their concerns and that their conclusion will be the same, 10 months from now, which is that unless there can be 100% revenue sharing with them, that they won't be able to support this. And so I fear that we are in a position where we could find ourselves exactly in the same place 12 months from now, where it feels like schools and the town are at odds. And as Deb said so eloquently, we are one town. I have to say, I was also thinking today about, okay, so say that we carved out the schools. Actually, I'm not sure that you can do that for one entity and not the other if you look at the MS1 and the tax report and everything else. But say that you could, that would leave that you would get the 8% of the pie that otherwise would be going to the county. And it's like, okay, well, how does that work? And it means that, we would be paying for the improvements, some would say the gentrification of our gateway, of our downtown, on the backs of the county nursing home, the county program for substance use treatment, the county program, for the jail, et cetera. And when you consider that we're really, probably one of the wealthiest towns in the state and maybe the wealthiest in the county of Grafton, to say that, we're going to be paying for pedestrian scale lighting and undergrounding of utilities, which we really do want. We love that sort of thing on the backs of these other programs. It just sounds, in this day and age, with all of that's coming down the pike, really, really selfish. And so I want to encourage you not only to think about setting the idea of the TIF aside for this year, but also going forward. I'm reminded greatly of where we were in this community 22 years ago when we were trying to figure out how we were going to renovate and build a new middle school and high school, which was just it needed as much as we need to fix sewer and water lines. And we'd had a building bond fail, another one was canceled. And we finally got it together when we were creative. When we put aside, we said, okay, no, we're not going to do X, which is building the schools over in Norwich on the Route 5 land. And no, we're not going to do this. We have to find some new way forward. And, over the weekend, I sort of put together some different ways of thinking about information that was in the memo. But you could still say, oh, yeah, we actually have this and we have this. And you know what? I mean, we haven't talked about that actually the revenue sharing with the fire fund is 100%. And if you were to go back to having that blended tax rate, that you would see, oh, there is more spending capacity there for downtown improvements. I also want to say that we've been, lumping the water and sewer together with the other improvements, which kind of makes sense because it's a lot of overlapping payers, but in fact, the sewer and water lines would have to be coming out of a different pool than what the TIF could provide for. And that's a big chunk, maybe, 30% of all the downtown improvements. It needs to come from the water and sewer tax rate payers, which there's a big overlap, but, it also includes part of Lebanon that's part of our sewer system. It includes nonprofits that otherwise don't pay property taxes. So it's a bit of a different thing. And I just think that if we, really think about, again, we're one town, and I haven't heard anybody say, no, they don't want good sidewalks, and no, they don't want water and sewer fixed. And they don't, I haven't heard anybody say any of those things. And what I can say is, also looking back, how much was the last water sewer bond that we took out 2-3 years ago? 22 million. And how many years did we sit here wringing our hands about how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And we took it to town meeting and it passed. There was nobody who spoke against it because they knew we didn't want to be putting stuff into the Connecticut River that was bad. And this is even more immediate, where you can see the pipes breaking in the street, and occasionally you have sewer in the street. No, we don't want that. And I just cannot imagine that we would be willing to pay for that on our own dime without taking something from the nursing home or making life more difficult for the schools. I know that one of the things that we were looking, or that was in your packet, was that bond schedule, where we call that a capital appreciation bond. I don't know, where you front load the payments. And that is gonna, if that were just on the town, even the combined blended rate, that would be a big increase. But, if you think about it, okay, so, you're trying to minimize interest payments, but isn't it kind of fair to have people who are going to be enjoying the benefits in 20 years to pay at least as much as what this year's taxpayers are going to pay? The $700,000 20 years from now, that's like, $500 now. They'd be paying less than half what we would be paying up front. So, there's just also ways of looking at the bonds. We have some pools of money, whether it's the termination benefit fund that can be thrown at this. You'd have to change the purpose of that fund. But to have step-ups to the full tax increase, there are so many options. And we haven't started to look at any of them, but this is the sort of creativity that I'm talking about. And we could have the consultant try to put all that together, but if at the same time, they're trying to put together all these projections of what future growth will be and what the future value is going to be, and it's all conjecture and you don't really know, and you could still run into a deficit that maybe then you'd have to go to the property owners and say, we have a deficit, we need you to pay. I don't see why we don't just say, okay, there's a lot of hair on that TIF proposal. We can do better by figuring it out in a way that's tailor-made to our community, knowing also that our community believes in sidewalks, believes in water and sewer breaks that don't break, etc. So I guess that some of my comments lead into how to use the 150,000, but it also applies to warrant articles this year and maybe next year.
Thank you, Karen. A whole lot there. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, and it's a big.
Well, so I think
It's a lot of values.
Eloquent advertisement for why we ought to step back and think about this at length over the course of the next year.
Yeah, well, and even the 150, how exactly that should be used. maybe don't want to decide that tonight, maybe you want to take another meeting or two to talk with more stakeholder groups and to find out exactly how deep the concern is about tips. You don't have to decide tonight the work scope of that 150.
But there's no commitment to it being a TIF, I think as we've discussed.
Yeah.
There's no commitment to it being TIF. I think we also
Yeah.
mentioned GO and
Yeah.
grants, so.
But I think if the Ari is suggesting that maybe the language should not be so specific as to be investigating the TIF.
I don't think we want to
Well, I
take
would-
TIF off the table.
Well,
don't.
I would actually say that a year from now, if it's on there, you're gonna find that we're having the same discussion. I mean, maybe over the course of the year, the consultant would also come to the conclusion, that we can do some other things. But, sometimes if you leave the thing on the table that's already causing a lot of consternation, you never really get to these other more creative solutions. So I would actually say that, think about delaying tonight, approving the scope of work, take some time to get some more feedback from stakeholders. See whether it really makes sense to leave the TIF option on the table for next year. I realize I'm the only one who's probably looked at this over the weekend, so you haven't gotten a lot of feedback, and I know that, others might as well. But I would say consider taking the TIF off the table for next year and really focus on the other options.
So I think the $150,000 is to help us get to the right answer. And I think for us to prejudge and foreclose options right now sort of defeats the purpose of taking the time to think about it properly and study. So.
Okay, it's just, things I think have the potential when it feels like the schools in the town are being pitted against each other.
And we talked, and we
It
talked
feels that
about,
way.
we talked about a make-whole provision for the schools as
Mhm.
for being selfish gentrifiers with respect to the county. I think that maybe the county billing mechanism is different. I don't think they get a percentage of revenues. I think it's kind of a fixed bill. We would of course pay our bill to the county. So I don't think we're robbing from the
Okay,
county
I see
per
what you're
se.
saying.
So
Okay,
yes, so we're not walking away from our obligations to the county. So that would, yes.
okay, so we would just have a higher tax rate to pay the county.
No, I don't think it would. We'd have a higher tax rate to pay the county. We would pay our obligation to the county, but they wouldn't, they don't get a fixed percentage of our tax base.
Okay, so they
send
don't,
us a bill.
right, but isn't that based on the percentage of our land value compared to everybody else in the county? So isn't our share of the pie?
So,
Yeah, so isn't our share of the pie? Yeah, so send us a bill. But the bill that we get is based on, so they look at what's all the net assessed valuation of the whole county. And Hanover's is what it is, but if you subtract out the TIF value, then it looks like we have a smaller piece of the pie. And so then it's other communities, so, that have to make up the difference.
completely over my head, so.
That's the point, that's the point that I was trying to make. This is, everybody appreciates what you're saying. I don't think this is the time to discuss this.
I think we're getting into the details,
To
but.
the extent.
I don't, we don't know what the mechanism's gonna be. I understand what you're saying, we don't wanna divide the town, but we don't know where we're going. If we table this now, we're gonna figure it out.
Well,
I also think it's unfair to say that we are gentrifying the
Yes.
downtown on the backs of nurses.
Thank you.
no, not
And,
nurses,
hold on.
not
And-
nurses, don't
and-
misquote me.
And I also think it's unfair to say that the town is being pitted against the school board, because it certainly
Right.
feels the other way around.
Yeah, and
I think we've tried to be creative about this. And we've tried to come up with ways to say, hey, we think that there's gonna be a massive investment into the space behind where Murphy's is, into the whole West Wheelock. And we want to enable that by repaving the streets and undergrounding power lines and replacing water lines and doing all these things that will enable those things to happen. And there's a lot of unknown questions, and my understanding going into last week was all we are doing is establishing the boundaries of the district so that way we can go ahead and answer all these questions. And instead, it's like, you don't have the answers to these questions, and you're putting this on the backs of nurses. And I don't think.
Children.
Huh?
And children.
And children, right, stealing from children. And I just think that all of these statements are categorically like false and misleading. And I think, again, I have 3 kids in the school system. I have 2 kids on IEPs. I want the Hanover school districts to be fully funded
Right.
and get everything that they need. But I also want to figure out ways to get some of these projects moving forward, because our sidewalks are crumbling, water mains are breaking, like downtown is kind of rough right now. It's not where it needs to be. And you're right, Doug, like we're having trouble attracting good businesses and the downtown contributes a lot in terms of the tax base, in terms of rooms and meals tax, and is a key reason why people choose to move to Hanover and put their kids in the school system. And we have to invest in it. And personally, and I think I can speak for the whole board in saying that we want to do this right, and we're trying to look for creative ways to do it, and we want to be collaborative about it. And it doesn't feel like we're getting there with comments like that.
Well, it's the schools are Pinnacles Town or vice versa, I could go with either one. I do want to say, I think that the reason, so the select board would like to just set out the outlines of the TIF. But if you look at the statute and if you look what was done in 1998, it was the package deal. And that's what really is expected from the statute, that you get and that's why last year when the town started to embark on sort of a 2-stage approach, the town attorneys stepped in and said, yeah, no go. It really needs to be more of a package, and to Rob's credit, he has put more flesh on it. It's still not where it was in 1998, I'm sorry, when the parking TIF was voted on. And I think that was part of the discussion that the finance committee had. So that kind of set the standard. We have the statute that needs to be followed. And that's why, although you would like to just set the outlines, that's sort of not what other people have in their mind, because it's supposed to be more. And, maybe it'd be nice if it was just one, but then people would be voting on things not really knowing what they were voting for, and that's not fair either. So I just want to say, I do appreciate your perspective. And I think that that's what is so great about having that hearing. And thank you, Chair, for allowing this sort of discussion to happen, because it, hasn't happened to date, and it needs to.
Sorry if I'm fiery. I really, obviously, my business is here, and having a healthy downtown is really important to me, to my fellow business owners, which I lead this group of fellow business owners. And it's upsetting when there are some misleading and mischaracterizations.
And I will say, I was probably traumatized by being on the select board, not the select board, the school board. And I think some people will remember that we had within 3 years, 2 teacher contracts go down, and the Hanover School District budget was voted down. And that was like around 2008, and we don't know what's coming. And I can tell you, you don't want to ever have your school budget voted down, because all the work, all the curriculum work, all the IEPs, everything comes to a screeching halt. If you have your teacher contracts voted down, it's horrible for morale, it's horrible for hiring. And that's why I'm particularly concerned about the schools needing to go out. We don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years, and have tax rate increases that are greater than what they would be if they were getting the infusion of new revenues, which is, it's like the person who's on Social Security and getting that COLA. It doesn't help entirely, but it helps somewhat. So I can see where this proposal could have a tremendous, tremendous impact on the ability of the schools to get their budgets passed. And for me and my values, at all lengths, we want to make sure that that those pass. And I wouldn't want to endanger that.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Evening all. So I'm Ben Keeney, live on Wolf Parent Farm Road in Hanover, proud citizen, proud taxpayer. I want to thank Rob for coming to the Hanover School Board meeting last week. I think he knew what he was getting into and he came anyway. And for that, I give my hands off, and it sounds like it might be happening again next week, for which I apologize. And I fully agree with his proposal, and I would urge you all to take that proposal of get a consultant, do it right, do it slow. That would address the concerns here. I agree with Jenny totally that there's kind of a discordance with the chicken and egg thing about financing it versus funding it versus designing it. First, and how there's an inherent tension there, because it's hard to do both at the same time. I appreciate Jared's comments about the needs for communication. And you're trying to thread that needle about, we're not talking about parallel parking and the what means, more like how's the financing mechanism. I don't have my school board chair hat on. That's the other district that will probably be meeting with Rob next week from what it sounds like is happening tonight. So I'm speaking as a person of one, where there are concerns here. And slowing it down may not be in everyone's best hope, but I think it's in everyone's best interest. This hearing, by continuing, is still breaking the same legal things I told you about last week. That's a problem. There's lots of problems with what Rob is presenting to you that need time to get addressed correctly. Consultant will need time. There's budgetary implications for the schools. I'm sorry that there's feelings of persecution or thoughts of misdirection. That is not our intent, but it kind of gets back to the communication breakdown that seems to be happening. We found out about this roughly 2 weeks ago. And as others have mentioned more eloquently, this has huge implications for our budgets for decades to come.
You're talking about the TIF.
I am talking about the TIF because I believe that's what we're talking about tonight for warrant
I was
article
just
10.
clarifying.
I'm sorry?
I was just clarifying. making
Oh,
sure.
okay, yeah. And so we have this information that from our understanding of it, which I believe Rob has confirmed that we're basically on the right path in terms of how we're perceiving and understanding this technically challenging thing to discuss. It does have school implications, where if the property tax values go up substantially, as it sounds like it will in this area, with the TIF especially, but in general will likely happen, the schools are going to not get our allocated percentage that we typically would get, which does have implications for our children. And not to play the, won't someone please think of the children, but it is my job to think of the children. And we don't want them to be hamstrung by that, because we are not going to decrease the quality of our schools. That's not on the table. What we're going to have to do, though, if we do not get this portion of our tax money, is to increase taxes elsewhere, which will still hit the town, which will still hit us all as parents and citizens. But it will look like we're picking on everyone rather than it's more trying to match it with everyone, because the town has taken away, perception or not, that percentage that used to be ours. And that has implications. We know from our internal data that the vast majority of parents, which is not your only population, but it's a substantial amount, do not live here because of Dartmouth or DH. They live in Hanover specifically, and not one of the neighboring towns, because of the quality of our schools. If our funding goes down or we have to hold it steady because of something like this, our schools will not be as good. People will then move away, property taxes will go down. Huge long-term implications. And the TIF as presented does not have an end date in sight. And your other TIF that you currently have is now coming up on 27 years old, I think. You said 1998?
It ends in 29.
Okay, so it'll be 30-ish years. Think about how property values will change in 30 years. And how could you not expect the schools to have a problem with that? We want what's best for the kids. We want what's best for the town. No one here is saying we're anti-sewer, anti-water, et cetera. It's do the funding mechanism right and take the time you need to make that decision correctly. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Ben. Other speakers on this warrant article 10? And with respect to warrant article 10, we will continue our discussion of budget, potentially incorporating Jenny's expressed desire, but with respect to article 10, town manager's recommendation is that this table warrant article be dropped. We vote on dropping a table warrant article. We could just delete it. All right, and I'm looking just by consensus, is it everyone is assenting to dropping this warrant article? All right, we are removing warrant article number 10 by consensus. And we will now get back to the discussion of the budget.
Which is, did we, remind me of what we did last meeting? Did we approve Article 19? Oh, it says right here we did. Okay, I see it.
So,
I'm talking about 19, correct? Because we have to.
19, yeah, so if we go through.
We would have to amend the article, we would have to amend it,
Yeah.
right?
Were we to spend money either by raising taxes or reducing the undesignated fund balance, we would be appropriating funds either way, and we would have to amend the budget accordingly. So,
Sorry. There's not a select board member on the school boards.
no, is there? No. Is there a school?
Is that something?
But there's a school board member on the CIPC.
CIPs.
Yeah.
Yes.
The finance
Because you know, we've been talking about this TIF for like a year or
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah.
And to hear that the school board had no idea that this was a discussion is disappointing.
Well,
because I think you know, as Ben pointed out, like it's about communication, and I think we
well, okay, so there had been a school board member, and I would say that she did a nice job of representing the discussions here, but you know, it was withdrawn. Do you want to speak to that point, Deb? Yeah.
Sure. I would just say that Tony did tell us there was conversation about a TIF. We only just found out it was on the warrant for next year. We never imagined it would get that far without us having some information and some data. And as you can see, there are three of us, maybe you can't, but Tara's on the board as well, here at the meeting with you this week. And I know that at least two people were here at your meeting last week. And you are welcome to attend our meetings anytime you want to. We would be happy to put an agenda item on our meetings. We spent way longer last week than we usually do at a Hanover School Board meeting because of this, in part because of this issue. We want to know, and you're quite right, we have a representative, she's no longer on the board, so now we have to get a new one, and we were down a board member until Tuesday night, another reason why it was a long meeting. So we are going to be sending someone to that meeting, but we also welcome someone from the Board of Selectmen to bring to the board the information we need to work together on this.
And we have 2 points of connectivity, right? We have the CIPC,
Mhm.
we also have the Hanover Finance Committee. There are select board and school board members on that as well. So
And we lost
And they're
both of
all dual appointed from the moderator and the school board, right?
yes, the
Yeah.
moderators of the school district and town. Yeah.
But the public members are, not the school board and select board members.
Oh, really?
Yes, the public members, yeah.
I
We
thought-
designate, each board designates.
The board designates their own
Yeah.
appoint person.
Thank you. All right. Okay, thank you all. You're welcome to stay. We may talk about funding with respect to the capital project, but not the TIF district. So, all right. Rob and Alan, do you want to walk us through the remaining warrant article table several?
Article 14 was, I'd be happy to. Article 14 was tabled because of the naming of the capital reserve fund. So I proposed language road right of way as to restructure it and include what we currently do. So our right of way is out, and that's the limits of our improvements generally without easements. That includes drainage, culverts, other types of assets that we have. And this will bring our capital reserve fund into compliance with our current practices and support the complete street policies.
That does include sidewalks.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that is a preamble to Article 15. Are there any comments?
You have to open another public hearing.
Yes, we are. So I thought we did that already. Yes, we did prior to Joanna.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Article 14, discussion.
Looks great.
Yes, okay, all right. Call for a vote. A motion.
I move that we approve Article 14 as neatly written.
Before you vote,
Yes.
it's a public hearing. You need to open.
Yes, I'm
That's
sorry.
what I'm saying. I said that.
Sorry, okay, yes. Are there members of the public who wish to address Article?
I'll second your motion.
14? We are-
Yeah. Now there's a motion on the table. Then you discuss.
Yes.
Motion,
All right.
second, discuss.
Motion and second, discuss. Members of the public, discussion. 14? No, all right. This is 4.
Aye.
All in favor? Thank you.
What did we do with 15?
Article 15 was tabled at the request of
Because it's related, it has the same name, same words.
No different.
No, so Article 15 was tabled to determine whether or not the bridge funds that were going to go back to the undesignated fund balance should be appropriated to the road maintenance fund or the capital facilities fund. Feedback from the public works director was that it's not required to go into the road maintenance fund. So we're recommending you move it to the capital facilities fund, the new capital facilities fund, changing the total from 15 million to 17.13.
That's for equipment?
Now, this is buildings.
Oh,
So this is what had been, I think, $1.5 million initially, right? So
Yeah.
we have now added the 213, incorporating the bridge funding into
Yeah.
Article 15.
Well, it goes to the undesignated fund balance and then it gets pulled back
Then
down.
it gets pulled back out. Yes.
I move to approve Article 15 as written.
Second.
Public
Discuss.
comment.
Public discussion, I'm sorry, you guys want to talk about the, yes,
And Rob's
okay,
good.
all those, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 19. I have recommended that you appropriate $150,000 from the undesignated fund balance into the increase, let me rephrase that, increase the budget by 150,000 and to take that 150,000 from the undesignated fund balance not impacting.
Ellen, you said that leaves us with 14.8.
About 14.5.
I think it's at 14.5. Okay. So this 32,670 is higher by that 150.
I'm sorry, Ellen, can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Where did we start? We were slightly above 15?
Sure. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to back out. One second. So we started at 15.35.
Okay.
And if we take 150,000 out, we land at 14.53. So it's about 1%.
Thank you, Ellen.
If we vote on this, it forecloses any additional funds for preliminary design on capital projects. Is that correct, Rob?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think we definitely need to do this. I mean, my thought is we look at the financing options, right? We do outreach, but we get to January next year and maybe we want to move forward and we don't have any money to do that. I think like this is not enough money to do the preliminary designs if we're doing those other things unless like, I mean, Joanna can probably speak to this better, but my understanding is this would be the money to do preliminary designs for one of the projects. Right?
What would be the money?
The 150,000, but instead we're doing some designs for two projects and a lot of investigation on financing mechanisms. So we're not really doing the preliminary designs. We get to January or maybe even June, we can't move forward. I just think that we want some flexibility going, like, so in my ideal world, we'd have another $300,000 so we could plan out both of them if we get there, because that's what we really want to be bringing next year anyway. We want those designs ready to bring.
So
And
it's either a 5% increase in the tax rate, we'll get you an extra 300,000, or we drop down further on the fund balance.
Are you saying a total of 300,000 or you're saying 450,000?
I don't know how much it costs to just do the financing studies. We were saying maybe $3,500 for the TIF.
$35,000 for the financial analysis for the city of Lebanon.
Yeah, and that's not looking into other funding mechanisms as well, or maybe it's around $35,000. Yeah, or taking a project, say, you know, West Villa, we gotta have a plan so that they don't not bury the power lines. That's happening now. Do that.
Kari's got a comment, but just like board members prior to Kari's comment, we'll still have additional opportunity after Kari's comment.
Yeah, so the idea is that we need to make progress. We want to do these projects. We've talked about that. We talked about putting aside money for these projects this year through the TIF. We're not doing that anymore. We also talked about how we need preliminary designs for which we don't have enough funds allocated to do.
Okay.
That, yeah, so that's, yeah.
Jenny, it's
sort of the
totally
idea.
logical, everything you're saying. It's just, I just don't know how much we need and when we're gonna need it. Therefore, it's kind of hard to appropriate funds.
I agree with you. Like, I would defer to staff to tell us how much money you think we need to keep this thing really moving, or to keep progress, whether it be TIF or other. Is 150,000 enough? Do you need more? No.
Come forward.
You
said
Rob's gonna talk first, but go ahead.
I actually was wondering, so Kari asked me this.
Just hear what Rob has to say.
Yeah, and I wanted clarification as well, so, just to get.
Wait.
All right.
Okay,
Hang on. I motioned you forward, but I'm just gonna put you in a holding pattern for a second. And go ahead, Rob. Sorry. You're next, Kari.
I'll frame it this way. I am a taxpayer and a resident of Hanover, and I'm fiscally conservative when I approach these things. I think 200,000 would have been adequate to get us to where Jenny is trying to move us. 150 was a conservative approach to trying to move the ball forward, but in a way that I thought was responsive to the select board's needs and wants, my desire to move this project forward, and respectful of the taxpayers.
And Ellen, what is that? You told us earlier, what does 200 do to, well, that's a third of a percent, right?
Look, it's to, so the undesignated fund balance would go to 14.3%.
Yeah, see, I did that.
14.3 with the 200,000. Kari, go ahead.
So I was hoping to get clarification at the same time. But my understanding is that the $150,000 that's on the table now is $150,000 more than you would have had if you had gone forward with warrant article number 10, because the growth in net assessed valuation in the coming year was actually going to decrease the tax rate. So there wasn't actually any money in your current budget for the what you're talking about, save for the sharing of what was in the planning departments, if I have that correct.
I'm stealing the planning department's consulting line item originally.
Right, but it's approximately $150,000 more than you would have if warrant article 10 was going forward, is my understanding.
Warrant article 19 would be amended upwards by 150, I'm right.
Right, but I'm saying like if 10 were going forward and 19 were not being
The
amended.
difference is that $600,000 would have been saved, so that there would be a funding mechanism set up.
Yeah, no,
For the
there
future?
there wouldn't be $600,000.
But it wouldn't have been appropriated.
It wouldn't have been appropriate.
It wouldn't have been
Right.
appropriate to be spent and.
Right, I understand the difference. The
So-
difference is whether or not there's a funding mechanism set up to move the project forward. So, yes, and I'm looking for a way to move the project forward.
So, but the bottom line is that if you had gone with the original setup, there wouldn't be any money for moving forward in the next calendar,
So this,
the next year.
Yeah.
So 150, I wanted to make sure that I understood is sort of new money on the table, that you're going to be making more progress by not moving the TIF forward than if you had stuck with the original. So, and that 600,000 was not going to be available in
To
the
spend,
coming
not
fiscal
able
year.
to spend, maybe to save, but not to spend. Maybe. Okay, all right.
so these are just great points, all of them. Kari's, Jenny's, I mean, basically, had we gone ahead with it? We should have done this regardless of whether or not we're going ahead with the tip anyway. This should have been on the table,
And we talked about
even with
that
the tip.
Joanna asked me
a few
point
weeks
blank.
ago
yeah.
and said, hey, how are we gonna pay for any of this stuff? And we hadn't included in the budget. So it was an oversight on our part,
It's good news.
you know,
Yeah.
last
Thank you.
month.
Yes.
So that's moving forward. on
Yes, yes, so you are moving forward with them.
Right.
And that's
And
what I was.
and
trying
we've
to confirm.
established the importance of communication and getting word out and all that stuff. So I think, I think we could probably move along.
Right, right,
We
which-
can-
which- which on-
I'd like to move that.
Yeah, on communication, I just also want to say that not only did the school board not hear about this until like 2 weeks ago, the CIPC in our report, West Wheelock was not in those hundreds of things that we considered. It was not there at all. And we did not hear about it until March.
All right, it was a late bloomer. Yeah, good.
We've already tabled that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you,
We were talking about communication and,
Yes.
and.
We've already tabled it.
And, well, I would say that this 150,000, if you're gonna ask CIPC to weigh in on anything over $100,000 for studies, et cetera, including stormwater, including sewer capacity, then this should have been on that list too. So this is something that should have come before CIPC and it didn't. And there's a lot that's not come before CIPC that should. And so it's just another matter that, you know, if there's a feeling among some that they're kind of being uninformed, that would be another example, and that's not a great way to move things forward.
All right. We have a motion on the table.
I move what's the number? Do we have to have a number out there?
200.
No, the 32,800
32 million.
$870,441. Correct, Ellen?
That would include the 150,000.
No, that would have just added two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you did the whole, you're doing math
did the
like
math.
crazy.
Be 32, 720, 441.
No.
That
No,
would be
no,
33.
thirty.
No, Athos did it.
Yes,
Oh, what did
I already forgot what I did.
I second it.
33,870.
Ellen, what's the-
33,870.
What's the real number, Ellen?
32,870,441.
Which is what he said.
That's what I
And
said.
that's why I seconded it.
So it's just exactly 200,000.
And the increase from the undesignated.
But in terms of what's there in the yellow, it's, you're just at 50.
Yes.
Correct.
I'm in the other document. Got it. Okay, is there a second to offices?
Jenny did it.
Second. Discussion amongst select board members. Further discussion from the public. Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right.
Are we done?
Well,
Now
we're
we have
done
to
with,
assign.
we also need to assign who will be presenting which
You
articles.
you don't need to do it.
We don't need to do it.
We don't need to do that tonight?
No.
All right, very good.
Do we have to do any kind of final blessing or whatever before the warrant, or is that done by doing individual?
We're done, we're done.
Done. Okay.
Final, final blessing.
I don't know. Like,
All right. Then you can close the public hearing, Rob, looking at you, yeah, okay. And then we will, we have no need at this date, okay, thank you for.
Thanks for coming.
Select board reports or anything else, as this is a,
extra.
an extra meeting.
Do we need a non-public?
Do we need a non-public?
No.
Just need a,
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay.